when I think about the ultimate heel tag team, I love FTR. I love what they do in the ring. I love how they always have a way of manipulating the rules, playing off the fans, always finding a way to build emotion and get you behind the other team.
Mm-hmm.
I know we haven't seen a ton of Varsity Blondes on Dynamite, to be honest, but by the end of this one, I was rooting for them to come out on top. They were up against the ultimate heels, and I think they showed out.
You know, if there is a trios champion in AEW, I think I'm gonna see if Varsity Blondes need a third member, man. I think I'd fit right in. So I mean, that would be a fun trio to be a part of. I mean, Griff Garrison at 22 years old and Brian Pillman Jr., those guys can work and
Yeah.
they're exciting in the ring, and
One of
it's
the things
great
that
to
I
see
liked
them on
about this
Dynamite.
too, yeah, one of the things I liked about this too, SPD, was, JR pointed out during the match that, Brian Pillman, flying Brian Pillman, Brian Pillman's father, had a very different style. And I think that that's a nice way to allow the younger Brian to build off of his father's legacy, but also start to branch out and build his own name and brand. This
Right.
kid's got a lot as far as his future is in store for him. He's been through a lot as a kid, going through, always having that shadow over his head. His dad really is considered one of the greatest what if stories in professional wrestling. As a fan of Brian Pillman, I think that would be incredibly hard to be his son and to follow in his footsteps.
Right.
And I give a lot of respect to Brian Pillman Jr. I think that his dad has to be incredibly proud of him. He looked incredible tonight. The mullet looked so sick.
Best hair in the biz right
It was
there, man.
awesome, man. And I think that he and Griff Garrison held their own against, to me, there's nobody who sings FTR's praises louder than I do, maybe other than themselves. But for the Varsity Blondes to show up tonight and hold their own against FTR and really put on a great back and forth babyface heel match like they did, it was really a nice showing for them, and I'm excited for their future. Obviously, I don't see them being in the title picture quite yet. They don't
No.
quite fit going against the Young Bucks anyway, really. But I do want to see more of this team together. I think that they have a good potential, and I think that they work well off of each other.
I think so too. I mean, I like that they're, rebranded to the Varsity Blondes. And,
Good
honestly,
name.
I think Griff Garrison, if he put on about 10 to 20 pounds, he would look like an absolute superstar. He's got a
You're
great
right.
look. He's really actually impressive in the ring. It was very beyond his age, very mature in the ring. And for him
He
to
seems smooth and
he
polished a
was
little bit,
smooth,
calm.
he wasn't going through motions. It seemed
Yeah.
very natural to him. And for him to really go on a run, kind of dominating FTR for a little bit, I was surprised by that overall. This is the first time we've seen FTR since Full Gear on November 7th. We've been missing them. They're much needed to the A-Stack tag team division. And the breadcrumbs whole thing, it's nice that they had a little
Say
face-to-face
it.
Luchasaurus,
I
baby,
know.
and Jungle
Go
Boy.
ahead, geek out, because I'm always geeking out about my favorites. I know
I
you've
know,
always been a Luchasaurus guy.
Luchasaurus.
So go ahead. Tell us how
No,
excited you are about FTR versus the Jungle Express
I
next week.
mean it's not confirmed yet, but I mean obviously it's just the breadcrumbs are there. But the match itself, there was some, the Varsity Blondes were impressive showing, but honestly, the match itself, I'm giving it a hard rating. I'm giving it a delete, and I'm sorry, you being the FTR fan, it wasn't their best match. It kind of was anticlimactic and ended just like randomly in a way. There was some cool spots going, and that's what I'm talking about. The roller coaster, the slow and the fast paced and all that. And so
Yeah.
to me, it's a delete, sadly. FTR being such an awesome team, you've got me on the FTR train, and the Varsity Blondes doing a great performance on TV, but the storytelling in the match gives it a delete for me.
Whew. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're jumping off the train, the FTR train, and that's okay. That's all right, man. We don't need you anyway. But for me, I can't, as an FTR fan, I can't give this a delete. Although I will say it's a soft elite from me.
Oof.
I
We don't
struggled
have a
with,
graphic for that.
yeah. um, I struggled with this one a little bit, buddy. I understand where you're coming from. There were times in which, and I can appreciate Dax always getting in the work, right? He's a big fan of the like the headlock takedowns. They like to grind out their opponents, and I feel like this was a really nice tug of war of a team that likes to bully their opponents, kind of grind out their opponents, kind of old school, just kind of brawl their opponents into the mat, using tandem offense, things like that with FTR. And then a young team who maybe doesn't understand the pacing that like FTR does. Not to say anything bad about Varsity Blondes in this sense. They're young. They're going to learn these things. Not every team is going to be at the level of FTR. You have to think about where FTR has been, the level of competition that they've had. Anybody who's watched FTR's career, I've watched them all the way dating back way before AEW. And I've always been a big fan. And a big reason why is because they do understand the psychology of wrestling. I think that that's an art, and that takes time to really get into. So I think the Varsity Blondes are going to take some time. There were times in which you could see that tug of war of styles. They kind of butted heads, and I felt like the high energy team of Varsity Blondes didn't necessarily know how to react at times to a grinded out team like FTR. And I think the Varsity Blondes would probably be better suited going against teams like TH2, the Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers. I could see them having some great matches with the Lucha Brothers. I think that there's a lot of potential for them, but this was not my favorite match by any stretch.